I've had this for quite some time. I've had this since high school.
Wow,
Yes, it's pretty old.
that's an antique bee. You should put it up on eBay and make some money.
What's inside is, this is a set of three. It's a cone-shaped piece of sandpaper that spins around and actually controls the thickness. As you turn this around, it hits this cone-shaped piece of sandpaper to sharpen it. You can also use one of these. It's a sanding pad. And you can just turn this just as you need it to control the point thickness. I also use this with a compass, which again, we'll look at it in a minute. Now, I also have a set of these. For my illustration work, I like to use these pencils. These go from a 0.9 to a 0.3. And my favorite is the 9 when I'm illustrating, and I have this set with a 2B lead, and it dumps a lot of lead out on your paper. And the 3 is really kind of fine, and it breaks off really easy. I also have a 7 and a 0.5. 0.5 is probably the most commonly used one. You see them the most in and the ones that most people use. 7's a little bit wider, a little thicker, and a 9 is the thickest. Now, as I said, I'm going to show you some tricks to freehand sketching. And I'm going to switch over the camera in a minute so you can see this. When you're trying to communicate with someone and you don't have a computer to play with, and you don't have your mechanical drawing tools to play with, being able to draw things without any mechanical device not only impresses your customer, but it gives you more opportunity to make drawings better and quicker. And here's my first trick that I use. I can use my hand like a person uses a fence on a table saw. I hold my pencil this way, and I use one of my leftover fingers as a guide to run along the edge of a pad. Now, you can have pads in all different sizes. This is just small for the convenience of this demonstration. But by placing your finger along the side of the pad of paper, if you take and put your pencil on top of your guide finger, all you have to do is pull back with your arm to sketch a straight line. As you can see, it goes back and forth in the same space. And you can run parallel lines with that and just keep doing that. Just like that. Now, I want you to try doing that a few times. Now, if you have trouble, if you happen to have long fingernails, or you might have some other disability, you can use another part of your hand to do it. I mean, you can use your knuckle as a guide and move it back and forth the same way. When you want to get further into the paper, you can also use the palm of your hand, which also helps you to keep your hand steady, especially if you had too much caffeine. And you can bridge against another part of your hand to get further into the page, like that. You should be able to go back and forth in that space. So why don't you try doing that a few times. And again, try your fingertip, or a way that is convenient for you. But even if you have a folded piece of paper, you can use your part of your hand as a guide to keep your hand straight as you draw your line. Okay. Later on, we're going to be working on designing a little house. And when you design a house where you're working on a floor plan or different parts, you generally have a point where you're sketching lines. You generally have 2 points that you're measuring, and we'll be doing a lot of work with graph paper because graph paper will give us a scale to work with, which is handy. Now, you can use that technique I showed you, but generally after you put your points down like this, one of the first things you want to do is first make sure your hand is going to go in the right direction. Now, I like to draw, and you'll see me do it again in mechanical drawing, where I'll line up on the forehand stroke and draw with the backhand stroke like this. I've rested the palm of my hand on the paper to keep it steady. And I'd like you to try doing this several times. Make a series of dots like this and just practice lining up with the forehand stroke and sketching with the backhand stroke. Lining up on the forehand stroke, sketching with the backhand stroke. Now, this technique, this backhand sketching technique, is one that we're going to be using for everything. We're going to take this natural movement of your hand to control drawing those lines. Now, the next logical type of line that we're going to be doing the most commonly used angle line in sketching is a 45. And the easiest way to do that is drawing them between any 2 diagonal corners of the graph paper. As you know, that makes a 45-degree angle. And again, you can line up your pencil and the forehand stroke through the corners and sketch with that same backhand stroke away from you through the diagonal corners of your graph paper like that. Now, if you have trouble with that, you can make a series of dots at those diagonal corners, line up on the forehand stroke through the dots, and then play connect the dots, just like that. And again, I'd like you to try doing that many times. If you want to put me on pause for a while and practice this would probably be a good time to do it. Okay, the next thing we're going to be doing is talking about drawing circles and arcs. Your hand has a natural motion to make an arc, either by pivoting from your elbow or pivoting from part of your hand. As you can see, your arm can make a quarter turn. Your wrist can also make pretty close to a quarter turn. So what you're doing is imitating the way a compass works. Okay. I took out some of my grandfather's ancient tools, one of which is his compass. This is probably 100 years old now, and still in pretty good shape. And basically it works the way we just described. You have a pivot point. And to make that pivot point, first of all, we need a center line. And the first thing we're going to do, using one of the techniques I showed you, is to make a center line, which is just